I
Jeff,
say good day
Jeff,
to everybody. Um, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Dami Osunro. I've been introduced. Currently in Canada. Um, in my previous life, I've been working across Africa, and then now I'm settled in Canada. I have over 10 years experience across risk management and audit, both internal and external audit. And I've worked right now I'm with Deloitte. I've worked previously with KPMG, and I've also worked in the industry for some time. So I'm a rare breed of those who have had practical experiences both in risk management and audit, and as well both in the consulting and in the industry. So I guess I have a strong credential, to discuss everything around, risk management and audit. And today I'll just be sharing with us some thoughts around how audit has changed, just as the introducing as the anchor has introduced, how audit has changed, especially given the occurrences in the last few years. I think last year particularly taught us a great lesson across the world, with COVID happening to all of us. That was a big risk that people didn't anticipate, and then that came. How has that as well, affected or further reinforced the fact that audit, so the central message today is audit cannot be business as usual. I wish I could interact with some of us in the room, maybe with some experience with audit in the past or in even now. You would agree with me that audit in the past has been more of a tick and match profession. And when I say tick and match, I would explain that, especially for those who may not be familiar with audit itself. Audit in the past has been a practice that just follows, processes, just wants to check and review things according to laid down processes or according to plans that have been made from the beginning of the year up to the end of the year. Audit has been or was so methodical. It was just a process-driven practice, right? But what has changed? What has changed right now is that audit is no longer just a methodological practice or just so much process-driven. Audit actually has become risk-driven. Audit has become driven by risks, that the business is exposed to across board right now. So, audit is now risk-based. And what does that mean? An auditor, or what does that mean for an auditor? An auditor right now has to audit based on the risks that the business is facing. So you cannot afford as an auditor to just stick to your plan from the beginning of the year, and just say, oh, this is what we want to do this year, and that's it. No, you need to be flexible. You need to be open to see the risks that the business is facing on a day-to-day basis, and you pattern your audit to that risk. And again, let's use the COVID-19 example. So take, for instance, a business or an audit practice that has made a plan from the beginning of 2020, that's January 2020, for the whole year, right? But then COVID happened majorly, you can say March, was when COVID was really declared a global pandemic. such an audit practice, or a viable audit practice, an audit practice that wants to be relevant, has to change that plan, has to tweak that plan to audit the things that what is affecting the business at that time, which is COVID-19. Again, somebody might ask, so what kind of audit are you going to be doing for COVID-19? The expectation would be that you will then do an audit to check that the business can continue properly even with COVID-19. Business is called a business continuity audit. You need to be sure that the business is able to continue, appropriately carry out business, continue to make sure that business is going on, in the way that it has been on even before COVID-19. So an audit practice would have to do an audit to check that the business is actually able to continue running business, even, without consideration to the COVID-19 situation or what the COVID-19 situation has brought upon us. That is how an audit practice will show that it is relevant to the business. That is how an audit practice will be appreciated by the business. It is time, it's in the past that the audit practice will sit back and allow the first line and the second line of defense to do all the firefighting, and then audit will now come at the end of it, to do one review or the other. No, right now, audit actually needs to make itself work together with that first line and the second line, and make sure that they are auditing what is actually, the burning issue, or what is actually keeping the management awake at night. That's the way we refer to it in this side of the world. You need to be auditing what is actually the interest of the stakeholders, what is actually keeping stakeholders awake at night, what is actually keeping people, awake at night. Now, the question you want to ask is, so how do you run a risk-based audit practice? How do you make sure that your audit is done, or is driven by risks? It's some simple process, I would say. The first thing majorly is to ensure that even as the audit practice, or as a business, your business generally, that's whatever company you're working with, there has to be a continuous risk assessment that is going on within the business. So whether the audit practice is going to lead that, or the risk management practice where there is risk management, or even I've seen some places where it is the strategy department that leads, the risk assessment practice or the risk assessment exercise. Whatever it is, what has to continue to happen is a continuous risk assessment for the business. A continuous risk assessment. I can tell you for free that the best risk managers, or the best businesses, let's put it that way, that would have prepared for COVID-19 to some extent. Of course, everybody was caught unawares to a large extent, but some people probably, by the risk assessment that they continue to do, would maybe have seen some signs by around December 2019, or maybe even January 2020, before the pandemic really struck in March. Some people, if they were doing any business that was doing a continuous risk assessment, would have seen some signs, before that pandemic was really declared a pandemic, and they would have prepared in some ways, even if a little, right? So the point I'm making is a continuous risk assessment has to be done by the business, which the audit practice would also then use continually, to make their plans. So when you have a continuous risk assessment done, that continuous risk assessment would be what will drive the audit plan. And you have to keep your audit plan flexible. That's another thing. Gone are the days where you have fixated audit plans, where you have audit plans that that are just cannot change, that they are just the rule. No, right now you have to be able to keep your audit plan flexible so that it can change with time, so that it can change according to the risks that is appearing in the business. Okay, so
якщо можна питання, да.
Dami, may I ask you a question?
Okay.
I understand the general picture, and our participants understand your idea, but could you please give us some examples from your own practice, Deloitte Canada, in years, and since you're working in this industry, so participants would very much like to hear the practical cases, for instance, and they would be interested of what should they start, how should they start with the risk-based audit? What is the initial points? What is the starting point?
Okay, so I guess that was what I was currently on. The starting point is always to have a continuous risk assessment going on within the business. That's always the starting point. You need to always have a continuous risk assessment, an ongoing risk assessment going, because that is how you can then know, what is the risks that the business is currently facing and what you need to audit at any point in time, and the risks doesn't have to be current risks alone. It can even be emerging risks, right? It can be emerging risks. That is, emerging risks are risks that are not there right now or are not currently affecting the business, but they have a potential of affecting the business in future, right? So that's the starting point. When you've done that, what you then need to do is to keep incorporating that within your plan. And that's when I got talking about a flexible audit plan. So once you have a continuous risk assessment going on, you then need to keep fixing or fitting that risk assessment into your audit plan. In other words, you cannot afford to have a fixated audit plan. You cannot afford to have an audit plan that you cannot change. No, your audit plan has to be open to changes, has to be open and flexible, right? And then the next thing would then be the execution of your audit plan, which is where you then need the right hands, the right set of people to execute. So there are some audits that might be what you call specific audits, specific areas. Some people, might need some specific knowledge to audit those areas. A business continuity audit, for instance, is a specific audit, that might require some specific knowledge to do. Okay, so, and I'm using that, I keep using that because we're using the COVID-19 example as, as a broad example, right? So one audit out of COVID-19, for instance, would be a business continuity audit. So you need to make sure that you have the right set of people who can actually carry out that audit. For business continuity, you need somebody who understands business continuity, who can do a business impact analysis, and then go on to do an audit of whether you have the things available to mitigate any occurrence, or that the business can continue to run even when there's an issue going on. So that again is something you must have in place. Now, and I've talked about how you must have a risk assessment, have a flexible audit plan, have the right people in place. Now, and I've talked about how you design. I don't know if I should go deep into doing a risk assessment itself, but really a risk assessment is always business focused, or is always per business. It depends on the business, the line of business that you are in. That's what will really determine what your risk assessment would look like. Now, what are the benefits of a risk-based audit? Which is where they will, I believe, they will share a picture with you right now. It's just enormous. It's just clear. What it does, what the benefit of a risk-based audit, what it does is that it gives you the benefit. It puts the business in a place, helps the business in the place of its most critical needs at every point in time. Because you are running a risk-based audit, you are doing an audit of those things that are most critical to the business at every point in time. So you are not the business, you are being a business, what we call a business enabler, a business a support to the business. You are almost like a business partner. Yes, you can put it that way. So you are becoming a business partner, and not just somebody who is there to criticize the business. It ensures that the business also is proactively prepared for emerging risks, and that's something that is very important. I talked about the risks the other time. I said it doesn't have to be just current risks, it can also be emerging risks. So what your risk-based audit would help you to do, especially when you are auditing things that are emerging risks, it makes the business prepared for emerging risks. It makes the business prepared for things that, eventualities that can happen in the future. And the last point, on these benefits, and for my little talk, is actually that it also helps to identify opportunities. We talk about risks as opportunities, as well as there's for risks, it's not just negative, it's also the opportunity. There's also the opportunity part of things. So as much as a risk could be something that could deter us from achieving our goal, it can also be an opener or an enabler for an opportunity. So the same way, when you run a risk-based audit practice, you are preparing the business, or you are making the business open to proactively seeing opportunities out there.